Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the State Approaches to Including Fathers in Programs and Policies webinar. All lines have been placed on a listen-only mode. If you should require assistance throughout the conference, please press *0 on your telephone keypad to reach a live operator. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Jay Fagan. Sir, the floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon or good morning, and welcome to the Fatherhood Research and Practice Network. This is our 11th webinar, and the title of today's webinar is State Approaches to Including Fathers in Programs and Policies. Just to give you a very brief background about the Fatherhood Research Practice Network, we are a group of researchers I'm from Temple University, along with Rebecca Kaufman, who's a senior research coordinator, and Dr. Jessica Pearson and Nancy Thonis from the Center for Policy Research. Brief overview about FRPN. This is a 5-year, $4.8 million cooperative agreement to Temple University and the Center for Policy Research. We are funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, specifically the Administration for Children and Families, Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation. We have been in operation since 2013, and our grant goes through 2018, although we expect to have a no-cost extension for 1 year. This project targets fatherhood researchers and programs and practitioners serving low-income fathers in the United States. So you can see here in this slide that three of the major goals of the network. The first is to promote rigorous evaluation. We have funded 17 research studies, which consist of teams of researchers and practitioners who are doing evaluations of fatherhood programs and fatherhood initiatives. That's one of our major attempts to promote rigorous evaluation, but we also do so by providing we've developed a set of new measures that are available on the FRPN website. It's www.frpn.org. These are free measures. They've been validated with low-income non-resident fathers, and we encourage you to take a look at these measures and possibly make use of them. Our second goal is to build evaluation capacity. We do this through a number of different efforts. One is the webinars, such as the one that we're holding today. And we also build evaluation capacity by attending conferences, practitioner conferences around the country to facilitate and foster good evaluation in fatherhood programs. In addition to that, we have a number of briefs on our website that are useful for helping programs and researchers to conduct good quality evaluations. And thirdly is our dissemination goal. This goal is achieved mainly through our website, which I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, but also through various types of publications and articles and briefs that we produce as a means to share information about fatherhood research and program evaluation. So the presenters for today's webinar include Ms. Kimberly Dent. She is the Executive Director of the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. Welcome, Kim. And Aldonis Grimes. Mr. Grimes is Director of Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative. And then we have some folks from South Carolina. There's Ms. Patricia Littlejohn, who is the Executive Director of the South Carolina Center for Fathers and Families. Second is Mr. Stephen Yarborough, who is Assistant Director, Office of Policy and Training at the Child Support Services Division in South Carolina. And then from Kansas, we have Ms. Deanne Dinkle. She's the Public Service Executive for the Department for Children and Families in Child Support Services Division, and then Mr. Ishaku Miyakori, who's the Director of the Mental Health Association of South Central Kansas. And now I will turn the webinar over to Jessica Pearson, who's going to take the lead on the remainder of the program today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay, and welcome. So why are we doing a webinar on state approaches to including fathers in programs and policies? We're doing it because we know that research shows the benefits of positive father engagement, and because there are many barriers to that type of engagement. We know that few states have sustainable ways of supporting fatherhood initiatives and programs to help fathers become more financially and emotionally involved with their children, and to make sure that public policies are father-friendly. We're doing it because we know that HMRF grants, the largest source of federal funding for fatherhood, are time-limited and project-specific, and they're not necessarily designed to build a state infrastructure for fatherhood and coordinate service delivery and policy at a state level. We know that many non-custodial parents don't pay their child support because of unemployment. In fact, OCSC estimates this to be 13% of non-custodial parents. But fatherhood programs and employment services are not allowable costs for child support agencies. That is, they can't spend regular program funds on these activities. We're doing this because we know that most employment programs are focused on job activities exclusively and do not get involved in the parenting and co-parenting arenas that most fatherhood programs engage in, and that many of the newer two-generation initiatives focus on custodial parents and children and do not involve fathers, and particularly non-resident fathers. And we're doing this because some states are succeeding and are making strides in providing these kinds of services, of using discretionary TANF funds, 4D incentive funds, and even direct appropriations from state legislatures. And we want to highlight that for programs and state personnel throughout the country. There's a more extensive treatment of this topic in a new brief that I wrote that's now posted on the FRPN website, and I hope you're welcome to review it and hopefully get some good ideas and leads from that. First, we're going to turn to a discussion of fatherhood commissions. They exist in 4 states. They were legislatively established in the heyday of the responsible fatherhood movement back in the late 90s and early 2000s. When there was bipartisan support for fatherhood initiatives. They are housed in state government agencies, typically in Health and Human Services Agency, with members across multiple agencies and organizations. I think Connecticut has MOUs with 10 state agencies on its fatherhood through its Fatherhood Commission. They're engaged in policy, education, promotion of fatherhood services, building awareness about fatherhood, helping to fundraise for fatherhood activities and operations. At least in one state, Ohio, they draw on TANF funding for their support. There are commissions that existed in Florida and Massachusetts that I know of that were disbanded. was attempted in Minnesota in 2015, and a new one in Pennsylvania is currently under creation. And in essence, they provide a permanent organizational home for coordinated initiatives to enhance the well-being of children by providing opportunities to fathers to become better parents, partners, and providers. Our first panel discussion will be headed by our Ohio participants. Kim's going to be talking about the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood, how it came to being and what it does and challenges and operations. And Al will be talking about what kind of impact having a statewide commission has for cities and counties. So Kim and Al, please enlighten us.
Thank you, Jessica. Again, this is Kim Dent, and I want to thank FRPN for allowing me an opportunity this afternoon to be a part of this discussion. So the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood is codified in Ohio Revised Code. You can find it in ORC 5101.34, and we have been in Ohio Revised Code since 1999. The Commission is a state agency, and we are uniquely housed in the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. And so why is that important? ODJFS has other offices under the umbrella to include the State Office of Child Support, which is my background, Families and Children's Services, Unemployment, Workforce Development, Family Assistance, and that's where my office is located, in the Office of Family Assistance. I have a staff to include myself, so it's myself and 2 staff members. And we are TANF funded. We are funded under TANF Purposes 3 and 4. And TANF Purpose 3 would be to prevent and reduce the incidence of out-of-wedlock pregnancies. And then TANF Purpose 4 would be to encourage the formation and maintenance of 2-parent families. What it is that we do, and we get a lot done with myself and 2 staff members, we bring public awareness to the important role that fathers play in their children's lives. And we do that through various presentations statewide. We always say, have PowerPoint, we'll travel. We've been to all of the state prisons and have presented there to dads to, again, talk to them about the important role that they play in their children's lives. We also train practitioners by statute. So again, if you go to 5101.34, every 4 years we must have a state summit. My goal is to do it every 2 years because I feel that 4 years is too long of a time to bring practitioners of Ohio together in order to talk about some of the best practices and be trained on different things to better serve fathers and families. We're also involved in state policy discussions, and the biggest part of my budget is to fund nonprofit and faith-based fatherhood programs to serve fathers on responsible fatherhood, co-parenting, and healthy relationships, as well as economic stability. We also put some funding toward June is Responsible Fatherhood Month, and again, that's when the budget supports that. Every year, the governor puts together a resolution declaring June as Responsible Fatherhood Month, and when the budget does support that, we want to ensure that we provide many grants to different communities to have father-child activities. We fund pilot projects. One of the most recent projects was working with the Columbus Urban League and a motherhood program called Moms to Be. That program is run by the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center, and it was a pilot project that we had implemented last state fiscal year to work with expectant dads and new dads because of the infant mortality rate that we have in Ohio, especially in our inner cities. We also fund Ohio County Fatherhood Initiative seed dollars, $10,000 to mobilize fatherhood in their respective counties. In Ohio, we do have 88 counties, and so far we have gotten through 24 of the 88 counties, and it is my goal to get through all counties, again, if the budget does support that. The commission is a bipartisan commission made up of 20 commissioners. We have 2 senators, one Republican, one Democrat. The senators are appointed by the Senate President. There are 4 members of the House appointed by the Speaker of the House. The governor has a designee from his office. The Ohio Supreme Court Justice has a designee, and that designee happens to be the director of the Franklin County Child Support Agency, who I've known for many, many years. We also have directors of all of the state agencies that Jessica had mentioned earlier. It is very, very important to have your state departments be a part of, fatherhood in your state or in your community if it's a local initiative. So we have the Department of Health, Mental Health and Addiction Services, the Department of Youth Services, the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, Department of Health, Children and Family First Council, and then, of course, Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. And so we have in the structure of the Commission on Fatherhood the directors from those agencies. The governor also appoints 5 members of the public, which is always very interesting because, again, they don't have to be from any of our government entities. And so we've had 5, members from the public appointed from, universities, from churches, so forth and so on. We meet by statute 4 times a year to discuss and share information to better serve fathers and families throughout Ohio. There are 3 subcommittees as part of the Commission on Fatherhood Commission, the Fiscal Funding Committee, the Summit Committee, and then, of course, the Executive Committee. At this time, the chair of the commission is Senator Beagle. He is a Republican, has been the chair for quite some time, and we do receive so much report from our General Assembly for the commission. And what it is that we're finding is many state programs want to, and they are attempting to include a fatherhood component in their various policies that or procedures that they're implementing in their respective programs. For example, the most recent one was home visiting. We have home visiting rules in Ohio that will be effective July 1st of 2018, and we were part of assisting to ensure some of those changes in the rules also include services and information to fathers. Also, in working with the Department of Health, again, just to be more father-friendly, and that's what we're always looking to be, is more father-inclusive and more father-friendly, change their bureau from maternal and child health to maternal, child, and family health. So I'm going to pause there because I know that my esteemed colleague, Director Eldonis Grimes from the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative, will want to add some other pieces to our portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and thanks to FRPN for allowing me to be part of this conversation and give you a little bit of background on the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative. We have a lot of things in similar and familiar with the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood because we've been fortunate to be funded through the county budget since 2004. There's actually a line item in the budget as part of our general revenue funds of approximately $1 million a year for fatherhood programming specifically. And that is really what's been a key in sustaining us for the last 14 years. I think it's critical for long-term success of any fatherhood program or fatherhood initiative to make sure that your dollars are consistent from year to year. And sometimes when we just allow on grants, those things drop off when the grants expire So you got to try and get some long-term sustained funding. And in reference to working with your Ohio Commissioner on Fatherhood, we've had a very close working relationship since our initiative was funded in 2004. As a matter of fact, back in 2007, it's interesting that you mentioned that a couple of the fatherhood commissions had been no longer exist. We found ourselves in the situation where the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood was in the state statute, but the funding for it had been defunct. So we organized a group from around the state, including the commissioner of Cuyahoga County at that point in time, and went to the state and said, listen, this is in the state statute. We need to refund this. So we worked out a transition team report. We spoke at a number of committee hearings. We wrote letters to legislators and said, hey, let's get this refunded. And the rest has been history because Kimberly Dent has come on board as the executive director and has done marvelous things. So that was one example where folks from around the state had an impact on making sure that the funding remained. In reference to the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative itself, our goals are still similar to the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. One, we emphasize fathers' involvement on a regular basis. Part of our funding goes to public awareness and making sure that we're telling dads, if you are involved in your child's life, stay involved. If you're not involved, get involved. And I think that's important because you can have the best programs in the world, but if people don't know about them, then they can't access them. The second thing we try to do is we try to make sure that we increase the father-friendliness of all of the county departments, from child support to job and family services to juvenile court and others. We had an outside organization called the National Practitioner Network for Fathers and Families come in and do an audit of all of the county departments to see if they were father-friendly, to find out if both parents are on case plans when children were involved, to make sure that there weren't any personal biases against dads that went on in the county. So that's something that is key and ongoing, and that's one of the things that has to be a top-down approach from whatever your organization is. The third thing is we fund fatherhood programs to meet both the financial needs and the emotional needs of children. I think we found that, you can be there all day financially, but if you're not there emotionally, something's missing. And just on the opposite, you can be there all day emotionally and be best friends, but children have to eat. And the other thing we do is we focus on all fathers throughout the community, regardless of their social, economic status, because we know all children in Cuyahoga County need their fathers involved. And that's why our 12 programs that we fund, is a strategic, as a result of a strategic plan where we have not only job training and placement programs, but we have boot camp for new dads throughout the county, Dad's Count program, but the Children's Museum, Healthy Fathers program where we're trying to get fathers involved in schools. We're talking to teens about not becoming a dad until they're financially and emotionally ready. And, like I said, obviously 3 job training and placement programs where we're trying to put dads to work. So we try to have a blend of programs, like I said, to meet both the financial and emotional needs of those dads. And finally, one of our goals is every year to have an annual fatherhood conference which promotes healthy father-child relationships, because we know, we always hear about the negative aspects of what dads aren't doing, but we don't hear enough about the positive things. And we know that there are a lot of dads out there in the community doing great work. And so we highlight those through our fatherhood conference that we have annually. As a matter of fact, the 14th conference is coming up this year. And then we also have an annual Fathers Walk to School event where we're getting dads involved at the beginning of the school year and highlighting the importance of fathers being involved. Last year we had 146 schools and over 13,000 fathers walked their children to school. So that old myth about fathers not wanting to be involved has been debunked by the fact that we see that when you ask fathers and you get them engaged, they do get engaged. And then finally, as Kim indicated, we need consistent support from our leaders. I need consistent support from our county executive, and our county council. Kim needs consistent support from the governor and the state legislators, and we can help each other out in that process. And, at the end of the day, we're all working together to make sure that children have the love and commitment of both parents. So now that we have an Ohio Commission on Fatherhood and we have a lot of the local county programs that have been funded through the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood, we can all marshal our efforts together to make sure that, statewide and within each county there's a fatherhood program for children. And that's kind of a summary of the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative and our interaction with the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. I'd be happy to take any questions at the end of the presentation if you'd like. So thanks again.
Thanks so much, Al and Kim. So next we're going to talk about what's going on in some states that do not have statewide commissions but have initiatives in human services agencies and are principally in the child support agency. And in surveying this scene nationally, sort of came across two models, two types of programs, again, spearheaded by child support agency and partners. One is focuses pretty exclusively on fathers as economic providers, and I think a model program for that, a very influential and effective program for that, is the NCP Choices in Texas, which focuses on working with non-custodial parents in the child support system. It works on assessing their employment status, providing workforce services, and closely monitoring their compliance with workforce program participation and child support payment. It involves very extensive collaborations between child support workforce and the courts. It's jointly funded by TANF and funds from workforce program and child support funds, and it involves many are the participants are court ordered to participate because they are behind in their child support payments. Another model approach is more holistic. It looks at fathers as providers, economic providers, but also as parents and partners. And some model programs might be the CSPED program, the National Non-Custodial Parent Employment Partnership programs, and also the programs that we're highlighting today in Kansas and South Carolina. It too involves the provision of workforce services and case management, but it also involves the addressing some of the barriers to successful engagement in work, parenting and co-parenting, and enhanced child support, where certain types of incentives are accorded to those who participate. It's staffed by a mix of child support staff, workforce personnel, and community-based organizations, including fatherhood programs. And it involves both voluntary and court-ordered participants from child support agencies and fathers from other sectors of society at all stages of case processing. So we're next going to turn to our next panel presentation. Involves speakers from both Kansas and South Carolina, and we've asked a 4D agency representative and a provider representative from both of those states to talk about how and when their initiative began and how it works and how it's what the desired outcomes are, and some of the benefits of this collaboration for both the 4D agency and for the providers. So our Kansas partners are going to kick this off first. Deanne and Shock.
Thank you, Jessica. This is Deanne. And our state agency is the Department for Children and Families, which includes child welfare, our rehab services, as well as our economic and employment services, and then child support services, which is where I'm housed. Our Fatherhood program started actually, our involvement back in 2011 when there was a federal grant that was awarded to a local agency, Connections to Success. And that grant was basically to promote economic stability, responsible parenting, and healthy marriages. That partner, Connections to Success, collaborated with our state agency in that grant. And then over time and through the years, that just grew from there. We now offer DCF through Child Support Services Program, offer a grant to 5 grantees across the state of Kansas who provide services for non-custodial parents, for fathers. And basically, our target population through that grant is TANF recipients and non-TANF eligible participants who want to reconnect and provide for their children. So we are TANF funded, and the goal of the program, too, is to promote healthy relationships, responsible parenting, fatherhood, and self-sufficiency through gainful employment that lends towards long-term economic independence. As mentioned before, we do take a holistic approach, and we really value this approach in that, as an agency, we recognize that non-custodial fathers of dependent children face challenges to strengthen their family relationships and to develop strong familiar support systems while fighting all those barriers associated with unemployment, underemployment, and also poverty. So it's really important for us to focus on employment services, while they are very important, but we also really believe in the whole package, being fathers understanding relationships with their own immediate family, and their relationships, or the kind of relationships they can have and build on with their children as well. And then there's lots of different services and different components to the grant. We have some grantees that work with reentry programs with our Department of Corrections. We have grantees that are very involved with the court system. And we just really strive to make sure we're providing a good, well-rounded program and services that includes the importance of employment, but also the importance of relationships and co-parenting. We look at an outcome of interaction with your children for those that it's possible for. And so I think that helps us partner with our Child Welfare Division as well as our TANF Division, and really helps us have a good relationship with all the divisions within our agency, which then helps us receive the funding as well. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about those things, as I think that I would like to turn it over to Shock, who is with the Mental Health Center of South Central Kansas and one of the grantees for our Fatherhood Initiative program, and he is here to talk about all the great things that they do through their program.
Well, thank you, Deanne. My name is Shaka Corey. I'm the director of the Work for Success program out of the Mental Health Association of South Central Kansas. This is our 4th year providing fatherhood services through the grant from DCS Child Support Services. So basically, our approach is holistic. We're fortunate enough to have a relationship that we built with the courts. So we don't like for them to court order things. They prefer to provide the gentleman a choice. So they have a choice of either participating in our program or participating in the work release program. So basically what we do is in order to engage fathers, we put them through a 2-week personal and professional development training where we cover the work readiness. We talk about healthy communication and relationships, and then the importance of engagement, but also the importance of making sure that they understand the obligation to take care of their children. So during that training, we like to reference it to getting to know yourself better. So they go through all kinds of unique and different activities that just kind of taps into that real father they are. A lot of the gentlemen we work with often face a lot of barriers, whether that's unemployment or access to their children. So during the 2 weeks that we have them, that builds a foundation for the work that's done after the 2 weeks. So we just basically emphasize the importance of employment, parenting, and just effective communication, whether that's at work, home, or school, in all settings. So whatever it is they're trying to communicate is being heard by those folks in those places that sometimes they have difficulty. So our program consists of, we have life coaches who assist the fathers with building resumes. They connect them to resources in the community, whether that's health, transportation, anything that can help them towards attaining that employment. So we try to take care of barriers that include identification, not having ID in order to obtain work, Social Security cards. We build resumes for the gentlemen. We assist them with the employment and how to go about your employment search in the most productive and practical way to where they're not wasting a lot of time. So we encourage that they do research on the companies and the places that they apply so they have a better understanding of what the requirements are for that job. We have a court liaison who is the first contact for many of the fathers that we serve. They meet him first in court, and because of the relationship that he's helped establish with our court trustee's office, it's a lot easier for gentlemen to engage in our program. We've seen our numbers the last few months pick up to where we were having about 10 gentlemen a month, so now we're averaging anywhere from 15 to 17 fathers coming through our 2-week training. And then, we focus on the family. So we work with the father, but we understand that it's important to involve the whole family in being a part of the father's journey as he tries to build himself up and get back to a place of where he can provide and be engaged. So we have activities where we encourage fathers to invite their families. Sometimes during our training, there are components that allow for spouses or significant others to come in and also receive some information that is vital, we think, to them connecting and being able to understand the way that they think and they operate. So it allows for more patience and tolerance. And then we have a facilitator who takes the gentleman through the training in a way to where he's putting things out there, and the gentlemen actually do a lot of the teaching and help build one another up through their various experiences that they talk about and just approaches that they've taken in the past, present, and approaches they want to take in the future to establishing sustainable employment that allows them to be able to have a livable wage that allows them to take care of themselves and their families. And during this whole process, we're fortunate that we've collaborated with other agencies and other entities in our community. We have a fatherhood advocacy group called Dad's Care Too, who has been a part of our program since the very first year we've done this. And they put on Men Builder Summits. They are involved in early childhood advocacy, and that's what they promote. So they promote father engagement, involvement. They also help with fathers getting reconnected with the children that are not fortunate to. And then, like Dan said previously, connections to success. That is who our program is modeled after. So the program components that they use, we also use. And we're fortunate enough in our collaboration with DCF and Child Support Services that we're able to adapt to the gentlemen that we serve. So we're able to add things that we feel like they need. So if we have gentlemen that need substance abuse treatment or might need some health-related issues, we're able to address those and get them connected so that they're able to continue forward that momentum. One of the things that the gentlemen do during the 2 weeks is they go through a life plan that has 9 components. It focuses on employment, education, family, social, health, education, spiritual. And so they go through and they list where they're at, where they want to be, and then we do a SMART goal to where they can write down in this SMART goal a specific plan and goal that they want to reach, and we break it down to action steps so they're able to monitor that as they see their progress. They're able to note that, okay, I've hit this mile mark in my goal. So they check it off, and that I think that is very vital because they're able to see their progress. And I think it's important that when you can see something happening, it's more encouraging. And then when you achieve it, it allows you to want to achieve more. So we partner with our child support services and economic employment services. So economic employment services assist with mock interviews. They provide job leads. They get to meet our gentlemen the final Friday of training to where they're able to meet these guys and interview and talk directly to them. So there are times where they might send a specific job reference to one of our life coaches or even myself based on an interview that they did with the gentleman during our training. So that's just a little bit about our program and the approach that we take. You know, we try to tell the gentleman that we want to leave no excuses for why they aren't employed or why they're not engaging with their children. So at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure that they do get employed, that they do engage with their children, and that they do communicate with child support services and understand that they're one of our partners in this initiative, and that all parties can work together toward a common goal. So I'd just like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we'll get back. There'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. So now we're going to travel over to South Carolina and hear that state's initiative. Pat and Steve. Pat and Steve.
While I reconnect the speakers, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm reconnecting the speakers. Please hold.
Okay. Okay, well, I think I'm going to advance for a bit, and then we can always come back and talk. In the meantime, introduce the issue of program funding and services. You've heard some of this in the presentation so far, that there are some different ways of funding programs, both commissions and statewide initiatives. And one primary source, TANF funds, and State Maintenance of Effort, MOE funds. And would you please, Pat and Steve, let me know when you get back on. And there are, as a result of declining welfare caseloads and fixed block grants, there are discretionary TANF funds that can be used for, as Kim mentioned, a variety of other relevant purposes, including promoting, sustaining two-parent families and responsible parenting, preventing out-of-wedlock childbirth. And in 2016, 20 states actually used TANF funds for programs that are categorized as fatherhood and two-parent family programs. Nationally, this comprised 0.5% of total TANF funding. Many states use these funds for, but the actual impact on fatherhood funding is funding for fatherhood is much less because many of these states are using the funding for other programs like after-school care, all good programs and needed programs, but not fatherhood. So it's really unclear how many states are using TANF funds for fatherhood programs per se, and the amount is very small nationally, even if you include all the other two-parent family funding programs. Nevertheless, TANF has issued a information memo saying that they encourage states to use TANF funds for NCP job programs. That was announced in a very recent IM. Child support incentive funds are another way these programs can be supported. Regular child support funds are not allowed for NCP job services because that it's not congressionally allowed. But incentive funds, which are funds that are awarded to states for high performance, can be used for job services. Unfortunately, per the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005, the funding available for incentive in the incentive pot was reduced considerably. And only 4 states have obtained waivers from Health and Human Services to use incentive funds for job services. Again, OCSC just released an information memo urging states to request waiver to use incentive funds for NCP work activities. And then I found at least one instance of direct legislative appropriation. This was in Minnesota for the Father Project, which had lost HMRF funding. It was unable to get a commission approved through the legislature, but the legislators were not unmoved by the issue, and they appropriated money for 2 years to keep this program going, and hopefully Minnesota fatherhood initiative programs will find a more permanent home. I'm told that Steve and Pat are back with us, so let's go back to hearing their description of what's going on in South Carolina. And welcome back, and go forward.
Thank you. Can't apologize enough for that. I'm Steve Yarborough with Policy and Training here at the Child Support Division in South Carolina, and Pat Littlejohn from the South Carolina Center for Fathers and Families is with me. We're going to tag team a little bit on this one because we each have different areas of expertise, and she can do a much better job covering the fatherhood program stuff than I can. You want to take it from there, Pat?
And so I'm just going to jump in a little bit on how this all got started real quickly. The Sisters of Charity Foundation of South Carolina started funding fatherhood in South Carolina in 1997, and then by 2002 really realized that they wanted to sustain this work but needed a partner with a little bit more muscle. And the foundation and DSS, and namely child support, had been working together on some policy issues, so had gotten to know each other and then realized that, you know, we were really after the same mission, which was working together to support families and fragile families, a common mission, but we were just taking a little bit different approach. So decided to partner in 2002, and it was through that partnership that the Center for Fathers and Families was born. We are a 501c3 organization, and then fast forward to 2014, and Steve can tell you what they did in 2014.
Well, Pat put it well when she said we realized we needed more muscle. We needed a contract, and we needed to go as close to statewide as we possibly could. So we followed the RFP process, the request for proposals, and we actually had 4 contracts come out of that, all won by, in essence, the same entity, and later consolidated. But that's where we are now. We're roughly halfway through a 5-year contract period, and it is an unqualified success. Things are going very well. The referral and engagement process, I get the privilege of, it's very easy for the child support program. We sort of have a nexus at the family courts where our staff and the fatherhood staff are there at the same time as, of course, is the family court judge. And our referral process, in essence, is our content process that the family court uses. It's real easy on our staff. We do a screening process and select the ones that are most likely good candidates for the program. And they essentially walk out of there with one of the fatherhood partners. As far as engagement, again, we kind of have the privilege. We turn it over to the fatherhood people. There are links to the non-custodial parents once they take care of them, and it's a really great thing for the program.
So at the Center for Fathers and Families, we're the umbrella organization for 6 regional fatherhood programs that provide full-service offices or satellite offices throughout all 46 counties in the state. And so while we get a number of folks through the court process, and we call that our jobs not jail process, where men are able to come to us instead of going to jail, but about half of the men come to us through other referrals, whether it's through probation, pardon, and parole, word of mouth from the men. But once they get to our program, Shock did a great job of describing the kinds of services that men need and the barriers, and so we're very similar in that. The only exception is that we do our curriculum is a little longer. We have a 1-week job boot camp, and then we do healthy marriage, healthy relationships, economic stability, and parenting in 6-week sessions, 3 6-week sessions, and then we have a 4-week session on men's health. And then I think one of the important things that we've been able to do, and I'm sure it's much like what Shock described too, is to help men learn to navigate systems and do better planning in their lives. And you know, when so many men come to us, they don't have hope for a future, and they've never tried to plan, and so thinking about their life and planning it's something they've really never really thought about. So I think we're able to do that. So, but I think one thing that's been really helpful for us as well as for child support and the Department of Social Services is that we maintain a fidelity of our program from county to county. So if there's a traveling judge, what he sees in a courtroom in Allendale is going to be the same thing he might see in the courtroom in Jasper County. So they're going to see a consistency as well as, the referral process is the same. So I think that is one of the huge benefits of having a statewide partnership and being able to have those programs consistently delivered in every community. So last year we served over 3,000 fathers together with DSS.
What Pat touched on about the fidelity statewide is also true from a child support policy perspective. I'm over policy and training here in South Carolina, and it's good to know that we're going to have essentially the same fatherhood program in a small county as we are large. There may be some difference in the level of services being available, but they are essentially the same program, same curricula. All that is consistent. One of the biggest benefits to the 4D agency that I can see, and I've said this many times to whoever will listen, is we've in essence hired an army of fatherhood workers. They have staff that have expertise that our staff doesn't generally have. We might have a few, but we don't have parenting coaches, we don't have financial counselors, mediators, and job developers working here in the child support agency. We have establishment and enforcement workers, essentially. So the fatherhood staff they're there to help us, and they do help us.
So, and I think from our standpoint, I think Steve touched on it, we do have about 100 employees all across the state working on fatherhood. And I think the benefit for us in working with the agency is, as I mentioned, we do receive a contract from them, but which helps provide consistency and stabilization in the funding. We do diversify and we'll talk about this later, with some other fund sources. So I think that's one benefit is consistency. The second benefit is the alternative to incarceration program that we've been able to develop because before the men did not have that option, and judges, frankly, did not have that option. So by doing that, I think the other thing is we're able, I think there's some fatherhood programs across the nation that are reluctant to work with their child support agencies, but we have found just the opposite because for us, we're able to teach the guys how to navigate that system, but because of the relationship we've developed now for over 15 years, is really about cutting through the red tape, sometimes being able to call, get a person on the other end that we've been able to develop relationships with. And what men see in that as a value is it legitimizes us and who we are, and when they see that we're able to help them overcome these challenges, then they believe that, well, you can help me do this, then I believe that you can also help me do that. So I think it brings that. The other thing I think is, and it helps men to reduce their apprehension about it. And then I think the other thing is, and I think Shock would agree with me, that fatherhood work is relationship building work, and that you have to build a relationship to gain trust and learn the guy and what he wants and needs to do. The folks in the child support agency just don't have time to do that. They don't have the capacity nor the time to do that. And I think that having the ability to build those relationships is what's transformative and helps the men overcome their challenges. So I think, and then last but not least, we've really worked in partnership with Steve to travel all across the state to do father-friendly training, whether it's in child support, child protective services. We've tried to also work collaboratively with probation, pardon, and parole. So, I think it's the fact that child support opened the door and said, we recognize that we need this father-friendly training because it helps us and it helps the center, it helps the fathers, but it also helps child support. And I think the biggest challenges is that, sometimes, with turnover and doing that father-friendly training, and you feel like you need to do it more frequently than maybe you have time to do because sometimes there is turnover. We've been doing this now for 15 years, and I think we've been through probably 4 or 5 different agency directors, and, every agency director, we really have to win over to the importance of fatherhood if they don't come to the agency with that kind of values and beliefs in why this is important. So I think that the ongoing challenges of turnover, even at the highest level, makes it really hard, and then it also then eventually puts the sustainability of funding at risk too.
Thank you. Great. I think we're going to jump forward to the next panel discussion because we've already discussed these different funding options. But I'd like to ask our panelists to take a minute to give some advice about funding fatherhood initiatives. What have you tried? What's your advice? You've been able to unlock TANF funds. Other states, and we've heard that's impossible. Some have council legislative appropriations, or in Al's case, a city council or a county commission appropriation. So what's the magic? How do you do it? 1 minute. I'm going to start with, all right, South Carolina. What do you give us some advice.
Well, when we first started this, we get a TANF allocation from the agency as a whole. We're part of the Department of Social Services here in South Carolina.
Right.
And that allocation was not terribly large, but it was enough to fund, some fatherhood. And we used all of our funding for that. But as we saw the need had grown throughout the state, and part of that came from the judiciary saying, really, we want this kind of stuff, we had to increase that. So we basically went looking for funds from the rest of the agency, have managed to secure them. Some are probably TANF. We have mixed in incentive funds when we absolutely had to one time. But right now we're kind of in a reevaluative stage here in South Carolina. But we are absolutely committed to maintaining our fatherhood endeavors and this program. We just haven't really, funding is a challenge. We just haven't really resolved it satisfactorily.
And I think the one piece of advice I would give to folks is, if you want to have a statewide effort and the funding isn't there, go ahead and develop the relationships. I think, we in South Carolina, because we do have a good relationship with child support, when other grant opportunities come along, whether it's from the Office of Child Support or other grant opportunities, we don't have to talk about shall we form a partnership. We don't have to work at developing our relationship and then working on a grant. And I think that is what's really important, is go ahead, develop the relationship, get to know each other, start working together, understanding each other, dreaming about what it would be, and then work for the funding rather than wait for the funding to show up and then form the partnership. That would be my one huge piece of advice.
Anything else that Ohio or Kansas wants to suggest or add to?
Hi, yep, this is Kim from Ohio. One of my favorite pieces that we like to fund here in Ohio is the Ohio County Fatherhood Initiative. And so I'm going to recommend to everyone that's listening to not forget about your stakeholders in your local communities, your faith-based, your businesses, fathers that are engaged in the community. So we do provide through a $10,000 grant or seed money to counties that bring to the table the Director of Child Support, the Director of Children's Services, an elected official, a judge, a faith-based or business entity, or both, and then again a father engaged in the community. And we have actually partnered with Ohio Practitioners Network for Fathers and Families to provide training, 6 to 9 months training to mobilize fatherhood in those communities. I think the biggest piece is the awareness, because what you have to do is talk to different entities, whether they're government entities, again, businesses that operate in the communities, the importance of healthy fatherhood, because healthy fatherhood leads to better structures for the families and the children, and then also ultimately healthy neighborhoods. So that's my biggest recommendation, is to make sure that you are engaging everyone in your local community that has some stake,
Great.
And this is out. This is out real quick.
Sorry, Al. Go.
Real quick, like I said, we look at our county executive. If you got county executive or county commissions or county commissioners, sit down and have them, talk to them, and talk. Most of them are fathers. And if you talk to them from a father perspective, they'll understand what you're talking about. The second thing is, there's a lot of information out there on the return on investment on fatherhood programs. We did a return on investment of our first 5 years, and for the $5 million, we said we had a return on investment of about $121 million, based upon the results, keeping people out of the system, children staying in school as opposed to dropping out, and those kind of things. And so the question when folks say that they don't have money to fund it, you have to be back and say, well, you can't afford not to fund it, because this is what's going to happen if you don't have fathers' involvement. And last but not least, reach out to your local foundations. There's a lot of foundations. You mentioned Sisters of the Charity. There are a lot of foundations like Sisters of the Charity around the country who are interested in these things. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, and that's a perfect segue for the next slide, Rebecca, please. And it deals with return on investment and assessing program benefits. Very, very quickly, some are very simple assessments of pre- and post-child support payment behavior, self-reported changes in parenting skills. Others assessments try to get out avoided costs, earnings and the tax revenues generated for higher earnings, avoided incarcerations, Texas NCP Choices calculates a return of $8.31 for every dollar spent, and savings in the state of Texas of $12 million. And the Father Project had a return on investment study by Wilder Research that looked at both the concrete returns in child support payments, earnings, and tax revenue, as well as the estimated savings due to paternity establishment, reduced criminal activity, increased child literacy, and father engagement. And newer studies have just come out showing that the costs that every dollar spent to invested to prevent or address childhood poverty has returned $7 to society and in general. So very briefly to our panelists, 1 minute about, in our next slide, the discussion of return on investment. What kind of data on program benefits, what kind of data helps you stay funded? What do your legislators, your agency heads, and what do you want to know? What do we need to do in the fatherhood field for documenting benefits? Any takers on this one?
I'd like to. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'd like to just jump in and say the one thing that I think would be really helpful is one of the questions that I get asked quite often is, well, how do you know this works long term? And so we can give immediate outcomes while a guy's in the program. How much does he pay while he's in the program? Did he gain employment? But what does that mean 5 years from now? And so I think that would be, if there was research that could be done, go back and find some, but it's so labor intensive. But that would be really helpful, because that's the one question we get asked a lot. What's the long-term impact of this?
Okay. Great.
Hey,
Thank you.
Could I chime in real quick?
Yeah, please do.
So with the way our program is structured, we look at it as it is building relationships. So we do have gentlemen. We're about to go into our 5th year doing this, but we still have gentlemen from the very first class that or training class that we had still involved. They still come around. In fact, I met a gentleman's children for the first time. It was in the very first training class we had just this past weekend at one of our events. So really, if you're able to hold on to these guys even afterwards, they've done the training, because like I try to mention to them, we all live in the same community, so we're going to run into each other, hopefully, and when we do that, we're not strangers. So if things are going well, I would love to know. So our program, we're fortunate to get updates from gentlemen from 4 years ago to current. So, and we still have guys coming to see us and just update us on what's going on in their lives. So, got to build relationships.
Long-term benefits, long-term outcomes. Okay, we're going to go to the next. We're going to go to the questions phase of our webinar. So, Angelica, will you tell people how they can submit a question?
Yes, of course. Thank you. The floor is now open for questions. If you have a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad at this time. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press star 1 on your phone now. Thank you.
And meanwhile, I'm going to feed to the panel this question or issue. OFA and Federal Office of Child Support Enforcement are encouraging states to tap funding, TANF and child support funding, incentive funding for NCP job programs. I want to go over again. Are we conflating employment programs, job programs, and fatherhood programs? Are they the same things? Is job program funding and job programs sufficient? What's the case for holistic services that include parenting and co-parenting as well as employment programming? Who on my panel wants to tackle that one?
Well, I'll be happy to jump in on that one. You know, I've long said that fatherhood programs are not synonymous with employment programs. And for this reason, because one, if employment programs were so successful, then why are we still running around with so many unemployed people? And I think because it takes, for the more hard-to-employ population, it takes more than an employment program. And I think especially for fathers, it's important to connect them to the higher purpose of fatherhood and to really address those barriers to employment. And it might not be just that they don't have transportation. It's about relationships and communication and decision-making and navigating systems, all those things that an employment program may not be equipped to do. But the most important thing is connecting a father and any individual to a higher purpose. And I think there's no higher purpose, no higher call than being a father and being a provider for your children, and that includes financial support as well as the emotional, mental, and spiritual support. And so I think it takes people to a higher level of purpose and motivation that an employment program just is not equipped to do, but is so needed to get people, especially over some of the hurdles that I think the fathers that we serve face.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have a question?
No, I agree with this is Al. I agree with the previous caller. You know, we look at Cuyahoga County, and when you look countywide, 50% of the families in Cuyahoga County are now single-parent households. It might be as a result of divorce. It might be as a result of never married parents. There are a lot of different things that result in children living in different households and the problems that come along with that. And if we just isolate the employment issue, we're going to miss a lot of those other variables that are important to that, you know, the father engagement in the lives of their child. And right now when we get calls, we get as many calls about custody and visitation as we get about seeking employment and those kind of things. So if you focus it in on employment, I think you're going to lose, like someone said, the essence of fatherhood and what fatherhood is all about. It's not just about providing shoes and coats. It's about being there emotionally and nurturing your children.
Thank you. Have any questions come through our line?
Yes, our first question comes from Brandon. Brandon, please state your question.
Hi, thank you. My name is Brandon Durst. I'm in Boise, Idaho, and I'm a former policymaker here and very involved with having fathers be involved in the lives of their children. I'm a dad of 3 kids, and I've lived what you guys are talking about. So I come from it from both a policy standpoint and from a personal standpoint as well. My question is, I think, and I appreciate what the gentleman just said, I think there's a sense amongst many fathers, and this was brought up at an NCSL conference a couple years ago in Atlanta, that they're treated as a piggy bank or as a bank account rather than as someone to be a active member of their child's lives. And my question is, what are your groups doing to help advance those issues of having fathers be more actively involved, not just financially, but also emotionally in their kids' lives? Because I know for me,
okay,
I'm a pretty active dad, but I've been...
I get it, but I'm going to cut you off because let's get an answer out and give someone else a turn. Someone a response? I think Pat just kind of talked about that, yes?
Yeah, she did. She did an excellent job. So I think the biggest thing is, with our training, we have our fathers focus on what they can change as far as how they approach the custodial parent, how they approach the courts in a manner that, like I said, is you can effectively communicate how you're feeling and not be adversarial. So we try to promote the change in our fathers first so they can control that. And then hopefully with that change, they're able to change this perspective of the custodial parent. Because if they're making genuine change, people see that. And so that is the best way for them to promote what they're trying to achieve as far as reestablish connections. And we see that works, because we try to tell them that they can only control what they do. So when they're able to do that, they're able to see results that they previously hadn't seen. Because if you're doing the same thing over and over as far as every time you interact and it's very volatile, then that's the response you're going to continue to get. But if you are calm, composed, and genuine, and we also ask them to apologize for anything that they've done in the past that would have that person feeling the way they do towards them. So those are some of the things that we try to promote.
Great. Let's go to our next questioner.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press...
Do you have any other right now, Angelica?
No, not at this point.
Okay, so I want to ask the states that... I want to ask to the states that don't have a fatherhood commission, do you want one? Do you feel a need to coordinate with other agencies, or are you de facto doing that? Kansas, what do you think? Fatherhood commission, would that be something that would be helpful, or are you? What's your take on it?
This is Deanne, and while I guess I don't really know, I value collaboration, and so any interested parties we can get to the table, the better services we can provide, absolutely. I feel like we have, without that commission, we have our own in a sense in that we're part of Department for Family and Children, in that we have our child welfare, our economic and employment services, our rehab services, and child all at the table already.
Okay. Any other takes on this from their South Carolina perspective?
We would love to have one. I can't think of a reason we wouldn't really. We're fortunate in South Carolina that we have some vigorous advocates for fatherhood, including Pat and the Center for Fathers and Families, and myself. And so we have most of the benefits, but it would be nice to have input from above, or pressure from above even, especially if it came from a cabinet-level agency, because we get a lot of support from the community, from the family courts, people like that, but it always helps to keep a statewide perspective, in particular if you have full-time, permanent players.
Great. So I have a question now about about the child support agency, and what are the advantages? Be a little bit more explicit about the advantages to the child support agency of having a fatherhood program. And so few child support agencies are really embracing it in this wholehearted way. And what about what type of child support incentives and enhanced child support services are really very powerful and helpful for fatherhood programming and for jobs programming? What is sort of really works and is needed?
Well, I think it's about relationships and listening, from a child support perspective, listening to what folks are saying and what they need. For example, a lot of fathers now are saying, listen, my driver's license is suspended. How do you expect me to go look for a job if I can't drive to get there? And so what we've done is we've lifted the driver's license suspension if the father agrees to go through one of our job training and placement programs. So that's bringing fathers in from the outside who've never had any relationship with the child support agency for a while, backing them into the fold, saying, listen, both of us are willing to give a little bit in order for the greater gain. We've done the same thing with juvenile court, where individuals are getting ready to face incarceration, and the judges, as opposed to incarcerating individuals, have said, listen, if you go through one of the Fatherhood Initiative programs, we're not going to arrest you, but you got to complete the Fatherhood program and show that you're actively looking for a job. So those are some of the progressive things that child support agencies. The last thing I will say is that within Cuyahoga County, we brought a representative from the Office of Custody and Visitation and had a satellite office here, whereas when children finish their when parents finish their administrative hearing, they can immediately go and talk about how to establish legal custody and visitation, because in Ohio, if a child is born to unmarried parents, custody goes to the mom. So they have to know that they have to take one additional step in order to establish their legal custody and visitation rights. So we've made that a more seamless process. So those are some of the more progressive things that we've done in Cuyahoga County to improve that relationship between the child support agency and fathers in the community.
Right. And what we've done at the state, Jessica, just to piggyback on what Al had stated, is we relaxed the Ohio Administrative Code to allow our child support agencies to have that flexibility regarding lifting a driver's license suspension. So one of the other things in Ohio that some of our child support agencies use is the ability to waive or compromise arrears owed to the state. So incentives don't always have to be in the form of actual gift cards or monetary items. Right, it can be some of the things that we can do for a non-custodial parent based on policy at the state level.
Great.
And I'd like to just put in one thing. I agree with everything that's been said. In addition, one thing that we've noticed, we offer state-owed arrears incentives as well, and that's really what gets our fathers in the door. But what we're learning is really then what keeps them there is the potential for a relationship with their child.
And in terms of getting galvanizing more child support directors to take the big step, Steve, Deanne, advice? Courage?
Courage.
Oh, yeah. I lost my train of thought, I'm afraid, but I think what I would say is go back to my earlier statement, we have a contract where we've hired expertise, so we don't have to have our own staff pulled away from their core duties. to make sure that we do a good job with fatherhood. And one thing that we do, I think that I'm most proud of, is I've said from the start of our partnership that we need to integrate fatherhood into the way we do business on a daily basis. And I wouldn't say we've got 100% of the staff thinking along those lines, but I think we've probably got 75 or 80 to the point where if we were to remove fatherhood services from our toolbox, we would have workers saying, well, what am I supposed to do with this guy when he goes to court? And it has a special meaning in South Carolina because we use the content process in this state more than any other state. We've done some informal surveys on that. And it's not a process that the program controls. It's controlled by the family court. But it's something we all have to reckon with here because the possibility of going to jail is very real.
Thank you. We are going to, if you advance to the last slide, let you know that, Rebecca, can you advance? We are how to contact us if you want to get back to us. This webinar will be posted on our website, as will the slides, and the brief that I mentioned is also posted on our webinar, on our website. So you can revisit this and forward it to others. I want to thank our panelists. You've been fabulous, and to Kim, Al, Patricia, Steve, Deanna, and Shock. Thank you. And we'll be back with another FRPN webinar in the next couple of months. We'll let you know about this. So thank you all, and have a great rest of today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank